The sky above Tau Ganymede V cracked with pale green auroras, unnatural, a side effect of the Zalvari fleets slipping into orbit. They hadn't fired yet. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was declaration enough. Captain Alice Munro crouched atop a collapsed comms tower, infrared lenses sweeping the ghost town below. Crushed playgrounds. Still lit street lamps flickering against the silent breeze. No people. Not anymore. Place gives me the creeps, muttered Lieutenant Kaido, just behind her. He adjusted his rifle, eyes scanning shadows that seemed to shift of their own accord. That's the idea, Alice replied, voice low and even. Ghostlight was meant to. The colony had evacuated 3 days ago, under strict black protocol. No broadcasts. No trails. Just vanish. In their place, staged chaos. Blood bags smeared across thresholds. Ragged dolls posed on rooftops. Human-shaped decoys slumped in the streets, necks twisted at grotesque angles. And beneath it all, a grid of subliminal emitters pulsed low-frequency signals to scramble alien senses. It was psychological warfare on a scale humanity hadn't dared before. Now, it was all they had left. She tapped her wrist. Echo units status. All sensors buried and live, came the reply from Delta Team. No energy signatures. No heartbeats. We're shadows. Good, Alice said. Now we wait. The Zalvari weren't just coming. They were here. Somewhere beyond the clouds, their vanguard fleet hovered, cloaked in psionic shrouds. The species didn't invade so much as they descended, like gods from dark mythologies, their minds touching the world before their ships did. She had seen their handiwork before. Entire cities flattened. Cultures ripped from time. Survivors brainwashed into docile slaves, wandering forever in psychic haze. Resistance, for most species, was brief. But humans had never been good at doing what they were told. A hushed tone chimed in her earpiece. Incoming scout pod. 2 clicks east. Low altitude. No heat sig. Wait, it's alive. Alice stood, slinging her rifle across her back. They're sending feelers. She and Kaido descended the tower in silence, boots light against the metal. The wind carried the faint buzz of static, the result of the colony's AI still running protocol ghostlight, distorting reality just enough to unsettle. They took cover beside a shattered grav truck as the Zalvari scout pod drifted into view. It was organic-looking, shaped like a floating eye, with tendrils of light trailing behind. No weapons visible. It didn't need them. If it sensed human thoughts, it would report. If it found nothing, it would move on. Unless it got confused. A hologram clicked to life across the plaza. A child's voice began singing an old Earth lullaby. The pod paused midair. Hush now, little soldier. The song echoed, its cadence distorted. Close your eyes and pray. The pod's light flared, then dimmed. It scanned left, where a headless mannequin sat in a rocking chair, and right, where a cracked mirror reflected the figure of a standing woman who wasn't there. Kaido whispered. Creepy as hell. Alice allowed herself a half-smile. Exactly what they need to feel. The pod tilted down, casting a beam toward a pile of scorched armor arranged into the shape of a mass grave. Bones, animal, not human, added to the illusion. Then it froze. A moment later, it emitted a sharp, high-frequency whine. Alice tapped her comm. Now. A ripple of distortion surged from the ground. EMP grenades exploded soundlessly. The pod's sensors overloaded. It twitched, hovered erratically, then crashed into the ground with a wet thud, its biological frame hissing and leaking blue plasma. Scout down, Kaido confirmed. Alice stared at the wreckage. It would be minutes, maybe seconds, before the rest knew. That was fine. That was planned. Back to the bunker, she ordered. Time for them to start asking questions. Hours later, the sky turned darker. Not from nightfall, but from the arrival. Through the tactical screen, Alice watched jagged shapes drift into orbit. Zalvari's ships weren't made, they were grown. They looked like insects carved from obsidian and wired with nerve endings. The largest, likely Zyrex command vessel, pulsed red at its center like a heart. The room dimmed as the system dimmed lighting for stealth. She stood before the command table, arms crossed, eyes locked on the trajectory of the incoming assault. "They'll deploy psychics first," Kaido said beside her. "Try to sniff out where we're hiding." She nodded. "Let them." Ghost lights designed to turn their minds against themselves. There was a beat of silence before Kaido asked, "You ever think this might be too much?" The illusions, the bait, the whispering voices. She met his gaze. "We're not trying to beat them in a fight, Kai. We're trying to break something they didn't think could break. Their certainty." He swallowed, nodding. She tapped the console, pulled up archived footage. Zalvari burning cities. Zalvari disintegrating children. A flash of her brother's face, smiling, alive then gone. "They think we're primitives with guns. But they're not ready for how human desperation thinks." Above, High Warlord Zyrex stood within his ship's nerve chamber, arms folded behind his back, surrounded by translucent memory threads. The last moments of the scout pod played in the air before him. The singing. The mannequins. The crash. Behind him, one of his lieutenants spoke. "No heat signatures. No communication. We believe they are all dead, Warlord." Zyrex's eyes narrowed. "Then why did the pod's final bursts record movement in 15 different vectors simultaneously?" Silence. "They are not dead," he said coldly. "They are watching." He turned to the nearest psychic seer. "Open a channel to the surface. Let them hear us." The seer bowed and activated the mind gate. A low hum began to rise. Alice heard it from underground. A pulsing pressure in her skull. "They're trying to connect," Kaido muttered, wincing. She leaned closer to the console. "Feed them everything." The AI obeyed. The mind gate flickered with static, then overload. Zyrek flinched as feedback shrieked through the chamber. Asterisk human screams, laughter, fire, chaos, music, war drums asterisk, an entire cultural history shoved back into his mind unfiltered. The seer staggered, blood pouring from her nose. They're not sane." Zyrek stood perfectly still, eyes narrowed. "No," he said softly. "They're human." The first Zalvari platoons landed at dawn. No thunder. No fanfare. Just the low vibration of their ships displacing air, followed by the unsettling silence of things not meant to walk stepping onto human soil. Captain Alice Munro watched from the command bunker, her fingers steepled against her lips. On the monitor, the enemy spread out through the colony like a black oil slick, tall figures in chitinous armor, arms split at the elbows to hold both weapons and sensory probes. Their movements were too smooth, like water in humanoid form. The colony did not fight back. The first squad reached the town square. They halted beside a fountain, long since dry, now filled with bones carefully arranged in a spiral pattern. Human bones? Not quite. Deer, cattle, artificially bleached, repositioned like a ritual offering. One of the aliens tilted its head. Then the singing began again. "Close your eyes and pray." This time, it played backward. Slower. The voice glitched like a corrupted file. The lead Zalvari turned, searching for the source. That's when the gas activated. A fine mist, odorless, tasteless, filled the air. Compressed from thousands of microscopic emitters hidden under the concrete, it released on a signal only Alice could authorize. Inside the enemy's helmets, subtle neural confusion began. Not hallucinations. Not pain. Doubt. They looked at each other. Movement lagged. Weapons were lifted, lowered, lifted again. One tapped his temple, unsure if the world around him was real. In the bunker, Kaido leaned over Alice's shoulder. "Hallucinogenic nanocloud confirmed active. Neural scramble holding. Phase 2 begins," she said. "Start playback." Moments later, a new sound filled the town. Human laughter. It came from nowhere and everywhere. Children. Soldiers. Crying turning into giggling. Giggling into howling. A synthetic echo loop that bent in on itself. The alien formation scattered, regrouped. Their discipline, sharp and surgical in open war, faltered under confusion. They were built for domination, not disorientation. Alice's comm chirped. Echo 3 to command. One of them just shot another. Thought it was a decoy. We're seeing signs of full psychological bleed. She didn't smile. This wasn't satisfying. Just necessary. Zyrek watched from orbit, knuckles pale where they clenched behind his back. The psychic link had collapsed an hour ago. His seer core, the finest minds of their generation, sat slumped in the mind gate chamber, recovering from an exposure none of them could describe. He had not punished them. Not yet. That came later. For now, he focused on the puzzle. These humans were not behaving like prey. Prey ran. Prey resisted with desperation. Prey screamed, then surrendered. But Tau Ganymede V had been scrubbed of conventional life signs. No kinetic response. No obvious defense. And yet his warriors were twitching. He watched a feed from one of his troops, standard combat view, thermal overlays intact. The fountain again. But this time the bones were gone. Replaced by a circle of chairs, each one facing inward, each with a child's toy seated upon it. Impossible. No time for anyone to change it. Zyrek turned to his adjutant. What does the pattern mean? The creature looked confused. No known cultural match, warlord. Exactly, Zyrek said. They're making symbols up just to unnerve us. Alice entered the lower bunker alone. This part wasn't on the strategic map. It was quiet down here, just the steady hum of server cores running passive visual simulations, and the faint vibration of the floor as the colony's AI projected mass holograms above. She stood before a wall of screens. One showed an overhead view of the colony, now overlaid with projections of false troop movements and phantom power grids. Another showed a heat map of Zalvari movements, erratic, broken, no longer coordinated. But her eyes locked on the center screen. Her brother's face. He was smiling, laughing in a grainy home video, 10 years old again, holding up a model starship made of rusted aluminum and hope. He had died during the first contact siege on Europa Station. The Zalvari hadn't meant to kill civilians. They just hadn't cared. Kaido's voice came through the calm. We've got movement at the west perimeter. Elite Seekers. Alice forced herself to look away. Deploy misdirection. Route them through Sector 9. That's the theater district. Exactly. Let them take the front row. The Seekers advanced with cold precision. Unlike the standard infantry, they didn't hesitate at the illusions. They weren't here to be fooled. They were here to find the source. Sector 9 greeted them with a low chime. A holographic curtain lifted as they stepped into the old amphitheater. Spotlights blinked on, revealing a lone figure center stage, vague, humanoid, unmoving. One seeker stepped forward. The lights flared. A burst of screaming static blasted through their suits, overlapping transmissions from dozens of human distress calls stitched together into a single incomprehensible audio wave. One by one, the seekers fell back. One dropped his blade. Another spun in a circle, firing at phantoms. Only one remained upright. It charged the stage. The figure on the platform detonated, non-lethal, concussive, designed to overload all sensor arrays. By the time vision cleared, the amphitheater was empty. No blood. No enemy. Just a single phrase scorched into the wall. We see you. Back in the bunker, Alice reviewed the aftermath. 3 seekers killed each other. One was unconscious. One, remarkably, had survived. Captured. Now strapped into a reinforced chamber, sedated and monitored. The techs had run scans. Its brain activity was odd. Not damaged. Transformed. It had seen something it didn't understand, and its mind couldn't file it away neatly. The human trick had worked. Disruption, not destruction. She stared at the readout. Kaido entered quietly. They're pulling back into formation. But something's changed. Less aggression. More containment. They're afraid of what they don't get, Alice said. You think Zyrek will fall for it? She gave a dry, joyless laugh. He already has. He's not fighting humans anymore. He's fighting the idea of us. Far above, aboard his flagship, Zyrek issued new orders. No more scouts. No more scattered deployment. Bring the fleet closer. Prepare for mass psychic incursion. We will breach their minds, he said to his commanders, and unravel the source of their madness. No one spoke. The seers in the back whispered warnings he did not hear. But it didn't matter. Zyrek believed the war would be over soon. He had no idea it had already begun, and that he was losing. Captain Alice Munro stood in the dim light of the underground ops room, watching chaos unfold on the screens like a conductor observing her orchestra. The colony was burning, not with fire, but confusion. The Zalvari were reacting, not controlling. They'd lost initiative. Report, she said, not looking away. Lieutenant Kaito's voice came through from above. 5 squads turned on their own. 1 platoon wandered into the recycling plant and shot shadows. Minimal actual damage to them, but morale's cracking. Perfect. She tapped a set of coordinates on the screen. Initiate Phantom Echo. Time to turn their whispers into screams. A pulse rippled through the terrain. Stealth towers lit invisible and began transmitting artificial movement, false audio signatures of human troops flanking, retreating, ambushing. From the Zalvari sensors, it looked like hundreds of fighters circling the colony. But in truth, Alice had only 30 operatives. The illusion had to hold. Aboard the orbiting flagship, High Warlord Zyrek stared at a projection of the colony. Report, he barked. The officer bowed low. They've spread. We estimate over 600 combatants. Unconfirmed. Their patterns are erratic. They appear everywhere, nowhere. At once. Zyrek narrowed his eyes. That's impossible. Yes, Warlord. But they are still killing us. He turned, the edges of his mind burning from the static memory of the Mindgate backlash. The humans, these humans, had mastered something no other race had. Chaos as a strategy. Zyrek had once dismissed psychological warfare as primitive. Crude. But now, he clenched his fists. We underestimated the species. Correct that. Alice stepped away from the main feed, entering a dark chamber where the AI cores pulsed. The synthetic voice greeted her. Captain? Projection field integrity, 87%. Suggests reduction in scope to preserve fidelity. She ignored it and opened her personal log, beginning a voice entry. Her tone was steady, but softer than usual. Monroe, Alice. UIDC, Day 9 of Zalvari encounter on Tau Ganymede V. Status, escalation proceeding as modeled. Enemy is fully immersed in disinformation net. She paused. They still don't understand. It's not about trickery. It's not even about war. It's about the fact that they can map us. They use logic like a hammer. We fight like storms. Out in the field, Delta Squad advanced toward the enemy's latest foothold, a tall observation tower claimed by elite forces. They weren't going in loud. They didn't need to. They just deployed the loop. A specialized device planted beneath the tower scrambled motion perception. It created artificial movement echoes and caused anyone inside to believe they were being surrounded repeatedly. Inside, Zalvari soldiers began arguing, then panicking. A few opened fire on corridors that weren't real. When Delta entered, not a single enemy remained alive. All had turned on each other. Back in orbit, Zyrek pulled one of his surviving seers into a private chamber. The creature trembled but obeyed. I need a thread, Zyrek said. A mind. A clean one. Someone real. You will find their leader. The seer hesitated. Their thoughts, do not separate. Then tear them apart until they do. The chamber darkened as the psychic probe initiated. In the bunker, Alice blinked. Her vision blurred. A sudden cold swept down her spine. Kai, she said over comms. I think they've finally figured out where to aim. It began with pressure. Not physical, not exactly. Her thoughts slowed, pulled like gravity was twisting them sideways. Memories bled into each other: childhood, training, Europa, fire. For a moment she wasn't sure where she was. Then she focused. She reached out, mentally grabbing hold of everything she had seen, endured, feared, and shoved it outward. The seer screamed. On board the ship, his body twisted, clawing at his own head. He collapsed in a pool of psychic backlash, twitching. Zyrek stepped back. What did you see? The seer's mouth bled. A world that never stops dreaming. Even while it burns. Alice steadied herself. They found me, she said, exhaling. Won't be their last try. Kaido's voice came sharp. Time to move, Cap. They're massing at the old stadium. We've got a chance. She looked at the updated intel. The enemy believed her forces were regrouping there. It was bait. She grinned. Let's give them a show. They prepared the stadium in silence. Alice's team laced the field with micro-emitters, sonic projectors, false weapon caches. Then they deployed the real trick, a looping, weaponized projection of humanity's darkest moments: trench warfare, orbital bombardments, acts of defiance caught in grainy footage. Heroes. Villains. Death. Rebirth. It wasn't just data. It was curated chaos, crafted to feel real. When the Zalvari entered, the walls came alive. 1,000 human faces stared back at them. Not with fear, but with contempt. Then came the roar, not of machines, but voices. Millions screaming. Humanity's legacy was not peace. It was resistance. Zyrek watched the chaos unfold on screen. Something inside him stirred, not fear, not quite, but unease. The stadium read as a slaughterhouse, but no bodies fell. No blood spilled. He saw his troops scatter. Weapons dropped. Orders ignored. Then he saw her. Alice Munro, standing at the center of the chaos, face unreadable, gaze fixed on the sky. She wasn't real. A projection. But she spoke. And somehow, the message reached him directly. We're not fighting you. We're teaching you. Empires fall. We just help them realize it. The feed cut. Zyrek's hands trembled for the first time in a century. He turned away from the failing offensive. Prepare a channel, he said. I want her brought to me. Alice sat alone in the silent bunker, eyes closed. They're coming, she said. Kaido answered. You ready? No. She stood. But I'm human. I do it anyway. The ruins of the colony's central temple rose like jagged ribs from cracked earth, long abandoned, built by settlers to honor old earth religions that no longer held power in the stars. Now they served a final purpose. Alice Munro stepped through the shattered archway, alone, her rifle slung low. The Zalvari had accepted her transmission. She offered a meeting. Not peace. Not surrender. Just a conversation. They agreed. The dust shimmered with heat. Sunlight burned through the cracked dome overhead. No illusions now. No tricks. Not here. She saw him as she entered the inner sanctum. High Warlord Zyrek. He towered over her, 7 feet of armored arrogance, skin like dark iron, eyes devoid of empathy. No guards. Just him. You're braver than I expected, he said, voice like grinding metal. Alice stopped 10 paces away. You're more curious than I expected. They stood in silence, the ghosts of the colony around them, shadows burned into stone, fragments of lives lost to an empire that saw value only in control. Zyrek tilted his head. Why resist us? We offer structure. Evolution. Purpose. Your kind flails in chaos. You call it chaos, she said. We call it freedom. Freedom is inefficient. Maybe. But we've lived longer on chaos than any empire has on order. Zyrek stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You've used deception, fear, madness itself as weapons. You broke my warriors, not with force but illusions. No, Alice said, meeting his gaze. We used memory. You tried to read our minds. All you saw was us. Raw. Honest. Terrible. Beautiful. That scared you more than any weapon ever could. Zyrek's face twitched. Just a flicker. Enough. You think this will save your species? No, she said simply. But it'll mark us. He moved first. One stride, then two, no hesitation. His arm lashed out, crackling with psychic energy, fingers aimed for her skull. She didn't flinch. Because the trap had already been set. As his hand reached her temple, she activated the spike hidden beneath her collar. A directed neurofeedback pulse surged up his arm, reversing the connection. Instead of piercing her mind, he fell into it. Zyrek screamed. Not aloud. Inside. He staggered back, clawing at his own head as waves of sensation overwhelmed him. Alice's memories poured through, war zones, cities crumbling under orbital fire, laughter at funerals, births during bombardment. Rage and grief braided with stubborn hope. Generations of survival without certainty. He saw a mother shield her child during a blackout. A soldier drag 3 wounded friends across ice. A man die on Mars whispering poetry. No structure. No singular purpose. Just life, loud, relentless, unpredictable. It was too much. He fell to his knees. You're broken, he gasped. Alice stood over him. No. We're free. She reached into her coat and pulled out a data core, the backup to Earth's failsafe virus. She dropped it at his feet. Your ships are already infected. You touched our systems. Our memories. That let us touch yours. Zyrek looked at her with something close to understanding. Then hatred. Then fear. You'll fall eventually, he said. Maybe, she agreed. But not today. Above the surface, the Zalvari fleet began to fracture. One by one, command signals stuttered. Orders contradicted themselves. Ships halted mid-maneuver. Psychic channels clogged with echoes, human emotions woven into code. The virus didn't kill. It corrupted belief. Zalvari crews panicked as their vision of a perfect empire cracked. They'd seen things they couldn't explain. Felt things they weren't meant to. Doubt infected them faster than code ever could. One cruiser opened fire on another. Then a second vanished into warp without orders. Chaos. Real, organic, unstoppable. Human chaos. Kaido and the remaining operatives watched from the hillside, hidden beneath chameleon nets. It's working, he said, barely believing it. She actually did it. No one cheered. Just silence and awe. Then the sky lit up, human vessels uncloaking, weapons primed. They hadn't fired yet. They didn't have to. The Zalvari were already retreating. Inside the temple, Zyrek stood slowly, shoulders hunched. This isn't victory, he said. No, Alice replied. It's a warning. He looked at her like he'd never seen her before. You're kind. I thought you were ants. We are, she said. But ants can build. Burn. Survive nuclear winters. You tried to understand us like a species. We're not. We're millions of contradictions in motion. She turned and walked away. He didn't follow. The extraction ship lifted off 2 hours later. Alice sat in the medbay, bruised, bleeding, but calm. Kaido handed her a datapad. Broadcast just came in from Earth. We're officially notorious. She scanned the headline. Empire retreats. Humanity declared apex-level threat. She exhaled, eyes closing. They finally got the message. He raised an eyebrow. Which part? That we're not here to be ruled. Aboard the fractured remains of his ship, Zyrek watched the retreat unfold. His command staff avoided his eyes. No one spoke of what happened on the surface. But all knew. The humans had shown something the Empire never accounted for. Resilience without reason. Resistance without rules. Asterisk asterisk. He stared out at the stars. And, for the first time in his life, hesitated. Galactic broadcasts lit up with rumors. Stories spread from system to system. Not of fleets or conquests, but of a single word. Human. No one knew quite what it meant anymore. But they all understood this. It wasn't something you underestimated. It was something you feared. And somewhere, in the dark reaches of space, the humans waited, still chaotic, still wild, still standing,